Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
So, continuing our discussion of household life in Krishna consciousness. So we discussed who should get married, how to get married, and now we'll discuss a little bit about what to do when you do get married. How to live at home in Krishna consciousness. Grhastha ashram means that household life should be for spiritual development. The word ashram means status of life, brahmachari ashram, ashram ashram, vanapasta ashram, sannyas ashram. It also means a place where spiritual life is practiced. Just like we see the brahmachari ashram means the place where the brahmacharis live. It's called ashram because it means people are living together for the sake of spiritual advancement. So Grhastha ashram also means the home where you're staying, that should be a place for spiritual advancement. Make your home a temple. Don't make it a place for sense gratification. In other words, everything in home life should be centered around Krishna. Therefore it's recommended that householders must engage in deity worship, otherwise they must fall down. Because if their activities are not centered around Krishna, then their activities will be centered around sense gratification. In many ways it's easier for the brahmacharis not to engage in sense gratification, because they're living together under discipline, whereas grihasthas, at least in modern society, they just usually live husband and wife without anyone to check them. And also husband and wife living together means there's always opportunity for sense gratification. So life has to be centered on Krishna, specifically around deity worship. The householders have a routine life. They get up, they go to work, so many different things. The center of that routine should be Krishna. If we think how to dress Krishna nicely, then we won't think so much how to dress myself nicely. If we think how to feed Krishna nice food, then I won't simply cook nice food for my own sense gratification. If we have Mangalarti for the deities, then our day begins in a very auspicious note. So in this way, deity worship for householders is essential. As Hari Krishna Maharaj was pointing out the other night, Prabhupada's desire was that householders living close to the temple, an established ISKCON temple, they should come to that temple and worship the deities. That means at the very least, they can come and take darshan. At the very least, they can come and take darshan and offer, when they come before the deities, they should offer something to Krishna. Maybe a flower, maybe a fruit. And better still, the householders, those who are living outside, those who are Brahmin initiated, they can engage in some deity worship also. Offer some aratis, cook some offerings. But even at home, if they're living at home and they can't come to Mangalarti, they should have a Mangalarti at home. But if they're living some distance from any established temple, then they should do their own home worship. They should be somewhat advanced before they take up deity worship. They should at least have Brahmin initiation. But they can worship Lord Krishna in his picture form. Picture is also one of the 8 forms of the deity. All this I've discussed to some extent in my book, Beginner's Guide to Krishna Consciousness, which should be available in Russian within 1 to 2 months. Now, all the food that is eaten at home should be offered. This is very important, because sense control begins from the tongue. The tongue is controlled by taking prasad. So, whatever is to be eaten, that must be offered first. Best if his householders only take prasad in the main ISKCON temple. But if they're living separately away from the temple and they need to cook some special things for the children, whatever they cook, they should offer. Best thing is if the wife and mother stays at home and cooks. This is very important that children should take food which is cooked and offered with love. In the modern age, it's very easy just to buy some bread or to buy some canned food. Now, this is contaminated, being cooked by karmis. So the consciousness of the karmis enters into the food. So I know many householders, because they think it's much easier just to buy something and give it to the children, but this is better not to do this. Food should be cooked with love, offered with love, and given with love. So children especially, or children, husband, anyone, if they have food which is given to them, cooked by the mother, then they naturally feel much better than if she just takes something out of a can and gives it to them. You'll find in many Indian families even now that the women are always busy cooking something. They're always thinking how to feed something nice to the children. That is their pleasure. Just like you see Mother Yashoda, she was always thinking to feed Krishna nice food so he'll grow up very strong and healthy. So it's better if the mother doesn't go to work. If the husband can earn enough money to support the family, then better the mother stays back and looks after the home, looks after the children. Of course, if they're living close to the temple, they could also engage in service. If the children are not very young, then what Prabhupada said is that mothers who don't have very young children, all the mothers, they can put their children under the care of one or two mothers, and the rest of them can engage in more or less full-time service. Although if the children are very young, then the mother should be with them. Especially important, they have to breastfeed their children. That is very important. Even apart from the physical benefit of mother's milk, it's very important psychologically and emotionally for the baby to have that contact with the mother. The mother has to be with the young children. She teaches them how to walk, how to talk, all these things. She is showering, giving profuse love to the young children. If children are brought up in such a way, then they'll generally be psychologically very stable. Otherwise, if children in the young age, if they don't get a lot of affection and love, they may grow up mentally imbalanced, perverted, and like this. Therefore, it's said, in Sanskrit, it's said that the mother is the first guru, because she first of all teaches how to walk, how to talk, how to behave, all these things. Prabhupada many times said that the nearest thing to pure love in this world is a mother's love for the child, because that selflessness is there. The mother is prepared, she just gives herself without any thought of her own benefit. It's said that a mother's love knows no bounds, it's unlimited. So this way, the children, they become very attached to the mother. So if the mother is a good devotee of Krishna, if she is attached to Krishna, then if the children become attached to her, then they'll also become attached to Krishna. So apart from teaching the children to walk and to talk, she teaches them to chant Hare Krishna and to love Krishna. We see Srila Prabhupada, of course he was especially attached to his father, because his father especially taught him Krishna consciousness from the very beginning of his life. So in this way, the parents, they're bringing up the children, they're the first gurus for the children. Srimad Bhagavatam says, Pitana sasyat jananina sasyat namochya dhyasamapetu mrityam. One cannot deliver his dependents from birth and death, then he should not become a father or mother. Unless you are prepared to teach your children about Krishna consciousness, don't have children. In other words, you have children, but take the trouble to teach them about Krishna. Of course, that's not a trouble, that's a great pleasure. Krishna consciousness, the children are very important. They're all special children. That's how parents should see their children, that this child is a soul who has been sent to us by Krishna. Because generally in devotees' families, what kind of soul comes? Someone who is a devotee in their previous life. Special souls. So the children should be looked after very, very nicely. And if they're trained nicely, then in future they can be the preachers and the leaders and the pure devotees who will help to change this world. There are many modern theories on child raising. Many psychologists have given their different theories. However, because modern psychology is based on atheism, Freudism, and all kinds of nonsensisms, then most of this psychology is also a bunch of rubbish. So reading these books about how to bring up children written by karmis will not be very valuable, just the opposite. Karmis, all their ideas are based on sense gratification. So they will give you will read their book, How to Bring Up Your Child as a Perfect Demon. How to Bring Up Your Child as a Great Sense Gratifier. So better not read these books. But Prabhupada, he used to quote from Chanakya Pandit, in which the whole formula of how to bring up children is summarized. Up to the age of 5, you indulge the children. Let them do whatever they like. Let them play and run and shout and whatever they want to do. Then from age 5 to 16, be very strict. This is the time of their education. You should be very strict. Now what is that? Nalayat lahavo dosha, tarayat lahavo guna. Says, just to be liberal to the children is very bad. Once they get past the age of 5, not to discipline them is very bad. They should be disciplined. There's many good qualities. It's very good to discipline them. Discipline doesn't mean that you torture them, but with affection, you should be very strict and firm. And their childish tendencies to steal, to lie, should be very strictly dealt with. So they grow up clearly knowing that things like stealing and lying are very bad. Then at the age of 16, the children, specifically talking about boys, they may be treated as a friend. Friend doesn't mean that he'll be treated exactly as an equal with the father. But the attitude towards them will change. They may be allowed to make their own decisions, just to bring them into the adult way of thinking. They may be consulted. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? This is Chanakya Pandit's advice. Of course, education of the children, that is another whole very big question, which we can't deal with in great detail just now. Obviously, if they can go to Gurukul, it's best. If there's a good Gurukul, where they'll be well taught in the principles of Krishna consciousness, that is by far the best education you can get. Otherwise, if such facilities are not available, then next best is for the parents to teach the children in their home. Prabhupada used to compare Karmi schools to slaughterhouses because they destroy all spiritual propensities in the children. At least they try their very best. They teach atheism, either directly or indirectly. By teaching evolutionary theory, they're teaching that life is simply a combination of chemicals, God is not in control. Apart from that, they subtly they promote meat eating, illicit sex, gambling, and intoxication. So all in all, it's best not to send children to such schools. But if you have no alternative, what can you do? Then you just have to teach them Krishna consciousness as best as possible at home. So, I got a little bit off, I went off into the subject of bringing up children, but I was talking about home life. Now, undoubtedly, there are many difficulties. How to balance family life, social life, spiritual life. You have to work to bring in some money, to look after your family, and you also have to chant Hare Krishna and perform all your spiritual practices. In the modern age, it's very difficult, because Kali Yuga means people are working like asses. It's considered normal to work very long hours, even to get enough money just to live. People, they may be working daytime, nighttime. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada recommended for our Grhasthas to live on farm communities, where they could escape from this working hard like an ass syndrome. Of course, it's not that by living on the land that there will be no work, but if one leads a very simple life, then he can minimize the work and maximize his time spent on spiritual life. Although modern man may not believe it, we don't need refrigerators, cars, televisions, and all these different things. We don't even need electricity. Believe it or not, you can live without electricity. In modern life, people cannot believe it. But of course, so many people live for so many thousands of years without electricity, and you can still do it today. And in many ways, it's very pleasant. From time to time, I visit one farm community. Some Grhastha devotees have made in South India. There's no electricity. There's one road which leads up to the farm, and then after that it's all walking. And there's no taps with running water. Water comes from the stream. So it's very nice, very pleasant. No bang, bang, bang and noises of motor cars. The only sounds are of the stream flowing, birds calling, cows mooing, very much in the mode of goodness. Very peaceful and calm. Human life is actually meant for living very peacefully and calmly, so that we can think about God. Modern city life degrades our whole consciousness, puts us in so much anxiety. So as much as possible, if our Grhasthas can make these farm communities, that will be a great step forward for our Krishna consciousness movement. It may not be possible for everybody to do immediately, but it is very important that our household devotees especially, at least some of them should make these farm communities. Then we can start to make Krishna conscious society, at least in microcosm. This is actually the way human beings are meant to live, very peacefully and calmly. Human life is not meant for running around, living in an apartment building, going to factories. It's not meant for this. It's neither good for the body, nor for the mind, nor for spiritual development. So we very much want to set up such communities so that family members can live together, make communities, and support each other socially. In traditional societies, they have extended families. In modern life, family means husband, wife, and 1, 2, 3 children. But traditionally, all over the world, family meant extended family. All brothers, cousins, aunts, uncles, grandfather, grandmother, great-grandfather, all living together and cooperating with each other and helping each other. There are many, many good things to be said about this extended family. Just like you see, especially nowadays, in this nuclear family, or this very small family, it's a great strain, particularly on the mothers. They have to look after their young children 24 hours a day. Young children need looking after 24 hours a day. If you don't watch them, then they may kill themselves, literally. They may pull something down from a shelf which falls on their head. They may open the cupboard and take out some knife. They may drink some bleach, fall out of the window. There's any number of ways in which they can damage themselves. And even if they don't hurt themselves, they'll destroy everything else in the house if they're not watched. The only time that there's going to be any peace is when they're sleeping. But then that's not fixed either, because they often wake up in the middle of the night crying. So it's a very great strain for a woman to have, if she has a young child, especially if she has 2 or 3 young children. But in the extended family, there's no such strain like that, because there are many mothers to look after the children. That means if 5 brothers are living together as one family with all their wives, and then there's aunts, uncles, grandmothers, so there's many, many mothers. And even the young girls from about 5 or 6 years old, they also start to look after the young babies. Instead of playing with dolls, they have their little brothers and sisters to look after. So in this way, the mother of young children, she's not 24 hours, she doesn't have to be with her young child. Otherwise it's very difficult. She has to watch the child, she has to cook also, she has to clean up everything. And in this way she feels totally harassed, and many times it's just too much strain for them. This small family with just husband, wife, and 1, 2, 3 children, sociologists call that a nuclear family. So a nuclear family is like a nuclear bomb. It can explode any time. Because just husband or wife together with each other, and there may be because there's so much strain on them from the children, from the job, and there's often tension between them. Especially if the wife, if she has to stay at home all day, then with the children, then that's a great harassment on her. She may not have anyone to speak to, or she has no proper friends or anything like that. And if she's working, she has to come back and she has to clean the house, cook, everything, so many different things. And then, because modern life is so miserable, the husband comes back from the office or the factory, and when he comes back, he's also totally feeling harassed. So both husband and wife are feeling harassed, and then when they meet each other, they express their harassment to each other by calling each other names or something like that. So many times these nuclear families, they're like nuclear bombs which explode as divorce or something. But if there's an extended family, that means that, for one thing, the women, they can all associate with each other, and even they may quarrel a little bit with each other, but more or less they have some help, they have some friends. And also, even if there is any problem between the husband and wife, there's elder members of the family there to give guidance and keep them in control. So, really, to re-establish civilized human society, we have to start talking about farm communities, agricultural-based society, and extended family system based on Krishna. Now, of course, that situation is not there now. And very often marital relationships are strained in the modern age, even between devotees. Often marital relationships between husband and wife is very strained in the modern age, even between devotees. So what should you do? That is the big question. If you can't get on with your husband or wife very well. Well, the big answer is tolerate. That if the marriage is not as ideal as you think it should be, just tolerate. If you think your husband isn't as ideal as he should be, or if you think your wife isn't as ideal as she should be, tolerate the imperfections. There is much to be said for tolerance. Even if one or the other or both, husband and wife, is a long way from being perfect, If they're trying to be a devotee and a responsible family, responsible husband or wife, then many imperfections may be tolerated. One particular thing is that we read in Prabhupada's books how women should be very submissive and all these things. Now, of course, women in Krishna consciousness should be like that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that afterwards. But one thing the husband should understand also is that for women brought up in a non-Vedic culture, it may be very difficult for them to adjust to this kind of attitude immediately. Often husbands expect that their wife should be just like an ideal Vedic wife, as described in the Vedic literatures. But as I was saying, for those who have been brought up in a different way, it's very difficult. It may be very difficult for them to adjust. So women should try to adjust their behavior to be like that. But if they're not the ideal Vedic wife that the husband was hoping for, they should also tolerate. They should not be not harass them too much. Do you understand? No. So if the wife is not the ideal Vedic wife that the husband expected, then he should understand. She's coming from a different background and he should not harass her too much. There may be many difficulties in married life, especially in the modern age, especially because we're trying to be devotees, but we haven't been trained how to live as Vaishnavas. We've been trained how to live as non-devotees. So we don't know how to behave with each other. This is not only in marital relationships, but between devotees in general. We should try to behave properly, but we should tolerate the imperfections of others. Always between the ideal and the reality there is a gap. So in the ideal situation, there is much support for the husband and wife from the extended family members. So in today's situation, that is not there. So married devotees should look for support from other devotees. Grhastha, he is somewhat independent from the ISKCON organization. But he shouldn't be totally independent. Rather, he should be interdependent. How do you translate that? Interdependent means he's dependent and independent both. So, you can do that, that's good. Now we were talking about how to balance family life, social life, spiritual life, working life. There's no doubt it's very difficult. How to get enough time to do everything. Somehow or other, you have to have time to chant your 16 rounds, do some reading, all these things. If you don't, then your life is spoiled. If your life is only for working, for making money, then you don't have time to chant Hare Krishna or to read Prabhupada's books, then your life is being wasted. So somehow or other, Grihasthas have to organize their lives so that they do have enough time for these things. Exactly how they do that, you have to see yourself. That suggestion I gave, go live on the farm. For many devotees, that may not be an immediate alternative that they can take up. But anyway, you have to adjust your life that somehow you have enough time to do all these things. Alright, now let's talk about a little bit about the role of men and the role of women. The husband and father, he is the guru of the wife and the children. It is his duty to provide food, shelter, clothing. He should, in the family, the husband, he should bring the money. It's a degraded position for a man to live on his wife's income. So the father is supposed to provide all these things by his work, but he also has to provide Krishna consciousness. His duty is not complete simply with providing food, shelter, and education. If he doesn't teach his children how to become Krishna conscious, then he's actually their enemy. He may think, I'm being very nice, I'm giving my life for my children. But having brought children into the world, if he doesn't teach them how to get free from birth and death, then he's simply committing violence on them. So it's a very serious responsibility. How he has to see how the children are brought up in such a way that they will be attracted to Krishna. So he's the guru of the children, he's also the guru of the wife. It's generally considered that women are emotionally weaker and sentimental, therefore they should be guided by their husband. That means the husband, he should also know about spiritual life. He should know how to behave in such a way as to become spiritually advanced. Traditionally, the acharyas, they would give instruction to their disciples, men, only men. And then the men would teach their wives. Just like you'll find that Parvati, the wife of Lord Shiva, is always asking him questions. You'll find throughout the scriptures, there are so many interesting discussions when Parvati is asking questions from Lord Shiva. She is asking questions and he is giving answers. So this is the proper relationship between husband and wife based on Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada was very explicit in one letter. He said that he wrote to one disciple that you shouldn't treat your wife as a machine for sex. The husband should see his wife as a Vaishnavi, as a devotee, and respect her as such. Now, the role of the women, we spoke something a little bit about that already. I said the other day also that Prabhupada, he always stressed the chastity for women as being the most important quality. In Vedic culture, I will also describe that, how in Vedic culture, the wife, they would be married very early, so she would never think of another man. But at least in modern society, we can recommend that once married, the wife should not look at any other man. Not look at means she should not desire. And that goes for men also. If they're married, they shouldn't think of other women. They have one wife, that's enough. Of course, in Vedic culture, polygamy was allowed, but Prabhupada didn't want it for devotees in this. Now, these qualities for women which are described throughout the scriptures, chastity, submission, many women in the modern age have a lot of difficulty relating to this. We have the women's liberation movement, which says that women should be equal with men in all respects. Srila Prabhupada is very much against this. He said it's not possible for women to be equal with men, because even according to their physical constitution, they are different. Different means they get pregnant and have babies, men don't. So when they have babies, they have to be dependent upon a man. Therefore, they should be submissive. Prabhupada also said that women are generally less intelligent. Not only Prabhupada said, the scriptures also said. And he explained that less intelligent means they have a strong tendency towards sense gratification. They're generally interested with decorating their bodies and so many things. So, I'm quoting Prabhupada in scripture, so all the women need not assassinate me. But these are some of the things which are said. Therefore, women are supposed to be submissive so they can be guided by their husband. Now, the woman's role in family and society is essential. Chaste wife is respected and glorified as a goddess. As Arjuna points out in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, if the women are spoiled, if they become unchaste, then the whole society becomes spoiled. Because if children are born out of lust, then the children, they're called Varana Sankara. They become very, very lusty, useless children. And they spoil the whole society. On the other hand, if women are ideal wives and mothers, they form the basis of a very good society. Men need their wives' support to see them through life. They need that. They need the kindness and sympathy and support. And as already described, the children, they also very much need the mother's kindness. So women, their life is actually a life of sacrifice. They sacrifice what might be their own interest for sense gratification to help their husband and their children. It means they have to be very, very tolerant, and even if, just like you see the children, they pass stool on the mother's body, still she tolerates. Now I know that many women in the modern age find this very difficult to accept. That even if the husband is unreasonable, they should still tolerate. But I don't, this is what is recommended in the scriptures. And I don't see any other way that family life can go on. It's my own personal observation. Because a husband and wife, they're two different people. And if they always disagree, then how can they live together? So, practically one has to submit to the other. And the Vedic directions are that the woman should submit to the man. This will keep peace in the home. So the Vedic directions are given by God. He knows best. We don't. So, if this is followed, if the woman, she puts her husband's interest first, her children's interest first, then only can there be peace. Now, in this regard, it may be asked that what if the husband is unkind? What if he behaves very badly? What if he uses harsh words? What if he is Sometimes even the husband, they may beat the wife, not unknown. In fact, it's not so uncommon. So in this regard, there may be many questions about this because the family situation is often very complex. But I would like to read one purport from Srila Prabhupada's books and give some direction about this. Which it may not solve all the problems because these problems are very complex. It gives the indication from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 3, Text 10. So, you read translation and purport. I also have a purport. Yeah. So like this, there are many purports in Srila Prabhupada's books which give advice about family life, and I suggest that our household devotees read these, especially in the third canto. There's about Devahuti and Kargamuni, there's some discussion. This purport is so important, this one that we just read. It says, even if the husband is irritable, the wife should be really cool and submissive. Because if she also becomes irritable, then the whole family life will be broken. Even by slight incidents, they just break up. And Prabhupada says that according to Westerners say that this means the wife is a slave. But Prabhupada says no, it's a tactic. That she, instead of trying to conquer her husband by fighting with him, she conquers the heart of her husband. Then Prabhupada says, however irritable or cruel he may be. In other words, even if the husband is a complete monster, that if the woman is still she goes on speaking sweetly to him, eventually he'll break down and he'll submit to her. However great a woman may be, she must be ready to carry out her husband's orders and please him in all circumstances. So many important. Then her life will be successful. This is victory problem. So this is how women can control their husbands. Prabhupada is describing that not by fighting, because generally the man is stronger, but by sweetness. Very good advice. Okay, what's the next thing? Alright, now one very important point. Of course, we can't cover everything in this seminar. There are so many things to discuss. But one very important point is that family life is ultimately meant for renunciation. Prabhupada quoted many times, Anjas Ardham Anam Rajit. When one reaches 50 or maybe a little older, he should leave home. This means the father should renounce. The woman, she has to stay at home under the care of the grown-up sons. So, when the eldest son is grown up, then he can put the wife in charge of the grown-up son and become renounced. Usually the general direction is not to immediately take sannyas, but to go to the Vanaprastha stage. Because family attachment to wife, children and home is very strong. Therefore, there's an interim stage between Grhastha life and sannyas life. Between attached life and totally renounced life, there is the stage, the halfway stage called Vanaprastha. In Vanaprastha life, one gradually becomes detached. But so that one can become renounced, he has to cultivate a mood of renunciation throughout life. It's not that you just wake up on your 50th birthday and all of a sudden you become renounced. One has to prepare by cultivating a mood of renunciation. Because if by the end of life you don't become detached, then you don't achieve the perfection of life. If at the time of death one is still attached to family life, then he has to take birth again. So at the age of 50, latest, sex should be stopped. Very latest. Now it's understood that Grhasthas are not very renounced, generally. If they were very renounced, they wouldn't have got married in the first place. But at least they should go on hearing about renunciation. They should regularly attend the classes in the temple, study Prabhupada's books, in which there's constant preaching about how life is temporary, you have to perfect your life, don't be attached. Grhasthas shouldn't think that that preaching is only meant for brahmacharis. It's meant for you more, because you're in a more attached position. So don't think that those lectures, they're not for me. I'll listen to some other lecture. You should listen also. Even if it sounds to you like the worst poison, you should let that poison into your ears. And if a Grhastha is actually practicing the principles of Krishna consciousness throughout life, then naturally at some point as he gets older, a feeling of wanting to fully dedicate himself in Krishna consciousness, that will again arise. Especially if one has had some years of training as a brahmachari before he got married. then these feelings will arise again. So even if one cannot be very renounced in his family life, then he should at least associate as much as possible with devotees who are renounced. Grhastha should be very respectful to renounced devotees and try to serve them. However, Grhastha should not be artificially renounced. It means when you're in the Grhastha ashram, there are certain duties to fulfill. So if Grhastha cannot live like a sannyasi, his ashram is different. Grhastha has certain duties and the sannyasi has certain. The Grhastha can make spiritual advancement by following the duties suitable for his ashram. That means, in the name of being renounced, he should not neglect his wife and children. Wife and children need the affection and emotional support from the husband also. Prabhupada recommends in one purport that a man should show affection to his wife and children, but internally he should cultivate a mood of detachment. Alright, now, one other thing is, I didn't take any questions because there will be unlimited questions. What to do in my particular situation. The point is, I've just spoken on general principles to give some idea of what ideal Grhastha life should be like. There are not many ideal Grhasthas in our society, either by the circumstances they're in, or their own weakness, or lack of training, or whatever the cause is. Most Grhasthas are not very ideal. I'm not saying this in condemnation, I'm just stating a fact as I observe. It's not, it may not be very surprising. We're, just like I say, we're beginning a new movement in the Western world. So it may take some time to come to the ideal standard. I've just given this seminar to give some direction, as I've understood from reading Srila Prabhupada's books and making my own observations. So Grhasthas have some idea of the standard they should be aiming at. Now, usually we get questions like, well, what should I do if this and if that, and people want to get some advice for their own personal situation. But mostly these questions, they're too complex just to be answered from a one-off question and answer in an assembly. Family affairs are usually very complex. But just, again, some general advice if there are problems in the family life. That don't be surprised if there are problems in your marriage. It's not uncommon at all. If the husband and wife don't 100% get on with each other, don't be surprised. It's quite normal. But at the same time, husband and wife, they should somehow rather adjust and live with each other. They shouldn't become upset over little things. Even if you fight 100 times, make up 100 times. Better not to fight. Then there are questions like, well, what if my husband is not a devotee, but I'm a devotee? This is a very difficult problem. There's no easy answer. But we can tell the story of Pishima. Pishima means Prabhupada's sister, who was also initiated by Bhakti Saraswati Thakur. She looked just like Prabhupada, actually. So, what happened, she was married to a non-devotee, who, like most Bengalis, was very fond of eating fish. So, she used to cook fish for him every day. And she had separate cooking pots. She would cook, she would offer to her deities and take prasadam. She didn't complain. She went on serving him very submissively. And no one blamed her either. Because the Indian culture is so strong that the wife has to serve the husband under any circumstances. That there was no question of divorce. There was no such thing. So her husband was a very unreasonable, intolerant man. But anyway, she went on. She bore children by him and she chanted Hare Krishna. She had children by him and she chanted Hare Krishna. And she went on with her Krishna consciousness quietly without trying to force it on him. And after many, many years, towards the end of his life, her husband realized what a rascal I was. My wife is such a saintly person. And his heart changed. So general advice is don't quit in frustration. Don't think that leaving your husband and wife is, that means you're necessarily very advanced. That kind of renunciation is not recommended in Bhagavad Gita. If one finds his duties too troublesome and therefore renounces them, that renunciation is called renunciation in the mode of passion. And from such renunciation, Krishna says, one never gets the fruit of real renunciation from such so-called renunciation. That is renunciation because you just find it too difficult. That means it's on the platform of sense gratification. Another thing is sometimes people come to Krishna consciousness, they're already married. And after becoming devotees, they think, actually, we're so attached to each other, it's all Maya. Let's leave each other. That's also nonsense. Because somehow or other you're in that situation. The man has already taken responsibility for the wife, and the wife has already agreed to serve the husband. Now you've come to Krishna, then serve Krishna together. Not that, I think I'll be more advanced if I just leave my wife, because I feel too much attraction to her body. That means you need a wife anyway. And if you leave this one, and being so-called renounced, you won't be able to control, you'll just run off to another woman. So better stay with the one you have and be a devotee with her and make your advancement together. Alright, Hare Krishna. So, any questions? Yeah, you can read it out in Russian. Does that mean if the husband's a devotee or not a devotee? Yeah, well, he's also serving. He's also serving Krishna. Just because you serve a guru doesn't mean you stop service to everybody else. You're supposed to serve guru and all the Vaishnavas. That I already explained that in traditional Vedic culture, the wife hears from the husband. They work together cooperatively to serve Guru and Krishna. And even if you're initiated by different gurus, that's not a big problem. Because all gurus, their motive is to serve Krishna.